this is Ross Bain with Roleplay Public Radio. This is RPPR episode 113, Van Art Gaming. This is about old school gaming, the old school renaissance, old school aesthetics, or the aesthetic of the
Say old a couple more times, Ross.
Van Art. That's, yes. So with me as always is Mr. Tom Church, and not as always, but more frequently, Caleb.
Hello.
Yes. And
Caleb is so calm and sedate, unlike us, Ross.
Well,
yeah.
You gotta go somewhere. You gotta escalate. You can't start high.
Sure you can. Woo! Yeah, no.
You've been badgered! Badgered!
Yeah, we're not the zoo crew though, but we do have some dignity. Don't answer that. Don't reply to that.
We will delete all comments regarding our dignity.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, in this episode we are going to be talking about the aesthetic of gaming from like the 70s and the early 80s. This is inspired recently because I got a new RPG, Dungeon Crawl Classics from Goodman Games. It is a massive hardcover.
You can actually stop a mugging with
it. It is like a phone book in size. Stops low caliber bullets, and it's got me thinking that we haven't really experienced the old school gaming that much. We're more into the newer kind of games, but we should talk about it because it's experiencing a renaissance now. So there's a lot of games that are being played right now that talk about this. So let's talk.
We were, of course, but wee lads at the time.
Yes.
So we didn't exactly experience it.
No, never. Well, I mean, yeah, we didn't.
It's one of those things we talk about.
Yeah, or you hear from older gamers. I mean, Scott Glancy can talk about it.
He can.
Yeah.
There's very little he cannot do.
Well, this is true.
Praise be to him.
Okay. Anyway, so we also have some news. So before we get into the main topic, first off, I am going to Comic Palooza in Houston, Texas. This is Memorial Day weekend, May 22nd to the 25th. I found a friend whose couch I will be crashing on, and we will be sharing a table there. Her name is Diana Botsford. She wrote an episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation. She actually taught me script writing in school, and so yeah, I'm like, hey, I get a free couch to crash on. Sure, I'll make it. So I'll be running hopefully some demos of Base Raiders. So if you're an RPPR fan, stop on by, say hi, buy my book. Plane tickets.
Yes, buy it.
Plane tickets aren't free.
It's all that gets Ross up in the morning.
Yes. So then next up, a book that Caleb and I both worked on. I'm very proud of. Firewall is out for Eclipse Phase.
Woo!
Yes, the PDF of it is out. The printing has not yet happened, but it will. I'm sure they will have sexy hardcovers in time for Gen Con.
I mean, that last outburst you had.
Yeah, you talked about having to build up. I mean, you just started it. You're at a 9 already. I mean, we need you about at a 7.
I'll cut you.
Yeah.
No, the book's out. It's we wrote a big section of it, and it is totes entertaining to read. Even the stuff we did not write, especially the stuff.
Oh,
we did
yeah,
not
yeah.
write, actually. But yeah, somebody on Facebook today posted a quote that I wrote as like excited to read this book already. It was like squee. And I totally took credit for it because I'm a shameless whore for publicity. But it made me very happy. I worked on a lot of books last year, and I told a lot of people about working on books last year, and very few of those books are actually out. So it is nice to see one actually exist and validate my 12 months of toil.
You're wandering in the desert.
Yeah.
So
On a horse with no name.
I was thinking more, 40 days and okay, all right.
Let's admit, we would probably name that horse Steve.
Steve.
As we name all NPCs.
Thank you, Steve.
Except in Payday 2, where Aaron has named all Joker cops Carl. And speaking of that, Aaron is still doing raillery videos, including some Payday 2 videos that we've been playing.
Are they as good as Body Ball?
Body Ball, where you throw body bags into windows and in one of the Bankhouse.
Well, at the same time, I remember that game. Like, I was actually opening the vault.
Yeah.
So you're like, where was Tom during all this? Like, I'm doing the heist.
Yeah, no, it's clearly there. It's a sport of kings. The kings they write out of history books, but. So that's fun. There's also the meth cook-off where I tried my Ghost Forcer, where if you put a silencer on a light machine gun, it makes it better. So I was...
This is probably wait for anecdotes, but in watching your Payday videos, I think I've developed the Ross Payton theory of gaming aesthetic for video games. Yeah. I think I got you pegged.
Oh, yeah? You care to elucidate these?
Well, that's obviously for the anecdotes. So.
Oh, okay. All right. We'll get into that. And then finally... Oh, sorry.
I was saying that. Yeah, I just do the work.
Yeah. No, you are
While
very...
the kings are playing over there. It's like, how's that vault coming? You're like, it's fine, Your Majesty.
Fix that drill. That broke-ass piece of drill.
Broke dick drill.
Yes. So finally, we also have some more serious news in that there was a controversy, national controversy, over a law in Indiana that affected Gen Con, which is... and so we wanted to... the law in question is called the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. It is... there are similar acts in other states and in the federal laws, but not identical. And I don't want to get too much into speculation
about the politics involved.
About the politics or the motives of people who do it or anything like that, because there's no real court case or anything where people can say exactly what would happen if this law was passed.
But we thought we would mention it because the Facebook thread got a little heated.
It did. And first off, I want to confirm that we will be going to Gen Con this year. Gen Con is still being held in Indiana. It has not been canceled or anything like that.
And we don't expect anything to really happen from it.
Yes, because right now, as of today, actually, because we planned to do this episode, we scheduled a couple days ago, but as of today, they announced that they're going to add protections to make sure that business owners could not discriminate against LGBT customers, against gay customers. And that was the major controversy of the act, because people, many legal scholars and people looked at the law, said that the Indiana law would allow discrimination of gay customers, whereas the federal and other state laws in other states, at least some of the other states, would not. And
legally, there was no accompanying non-discrimination bill in the state, unlike things like Illinois,
which is changing today.
And so when the law is worded as in least restrictive and compelling state interest, if there's a law on the books already, and then you add your RFRA Act, well, the compelling interest is that the state already has a law, and the least restrictive is that nobody has to change a law.
Yeah.
But if people start discriminating against people, from therefore, you have to prove the state has a compelling interest, and then you have to prove that passing massive, wide-scope municipal and state-wise hate legislation is a least restrictive act, which is, nigh impossible to do. But now they changed it. So.
Yeah. Well, really what happened is after the original law was passed passed by the legislators and was going to be signed by the governor, the Gen Con people.
The CEO of Gen Con.
Adrian Stout?
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of people... I saw Stacey at Kirby, but I don't think she's the...
the letter was signed by the CEO.
Yeah.
Who has just an amazing name.
And
look it up. It's just absurd.
But basically, Gen Con said, we have a contract saying that we have to stay in Indianapolis until 2020 because, but we will look at other venues, other cities very seriously starting 2021 if this law remains as it is. And Gen Con puts in like $50 million into Indianapolis every year over a period of 4 days, which is a lot of money, a lot of tax money. And then, of course, many other companies came out against the law, and
also so did the mayor of Indianapolis.
Yeah, Indianapolis. A lot of, and so, but what happened was a lot of gamers, a lot of people there were like, "Well, I'm not going to go to Gen Con this year. It's obvious I can't go. I'm just going to boycott it immediately." And then other people, well, if you've already locked in for this year, that's fine. But if you go next year, you're clearly, you're a hypocrite, and you obviously support this law, or you're not supporting a moral boycott or something like that. And
that's why we're bringing this up on the podcast, because we should be clear that in no way, shape, or form is RPPR like even entertaining the idea that LGBT people need to rhetorically defend their right to exist or anything like that. Like, no one's saying, resolved, you should not stone me. Like, that's a terrible way to live. And we just take that as a given. But the whole like, well, I'm not going to Gen Con this year because of this. Like that just seems so backwards and kind of out of left field to us. That is what we're commenting on. So Ross, I'm sorry.
I just said we stand with Gen Con. I think they made they were in a very difficult position. And they did the best they could. They worked through the appropriate channels, and I think there's probably a lot of behind the scenes political machinations between them, the Chamber of Commerce, and many other organizations to put pressure onto Mike Pence and the state legislators in order to add this bill, this protection.
And I would say even if this thing wasn't amended yet, by the time we go, I was totally not worried because the Indianapolis itself, especially the shop owners, that's basically they all love Gen Con.
Yes,
that's some of their busiest time.
Well, I think I also want to point out that I think Gen Con is a very tolerant, very exclusive, very inclusive organization, and I think. I'm not saying gamers are perfect, but I do think gamers, on average, are more tolerant of other people, of other sexualities and that kind of thing, than the average person. We
hate orcs. We don't hate other people.
We hate imaginary others that don't really exist, so we can project all our tribal instincts onto. So it's hell.
Screw you, goblins.
Yeah, screw you, imaginary people, not real people. So so that's what I think.
And I am of the opinion that most people who came boycotting Gen Con had no real intention of going to Gen Con in the first place. Because first off, if you're serious about going to Gen Con, by the time the RFRA stuff comes out, you're as economically locked into Gen Con as Gen Con is. Cause, holy God, it's absurd the amount of planning you have to do. Furthermore, were the first people on board to do this. Like, they did everything right as an organization, and were as inclusive as possible. Considering the amount of money. And I just think that while the RFRA, I think it's unquestionable that it had bad intentions, considering the people who signed the law with Mike Pence.
Have you seen that photograph?
Yeah, and it has been. And it has been negated and somewhat neutered legislatively now. I think like perspective is in order, because like if you think that like boycotting Gen Con is the most powerful move you can make for equal rights in America right now, you haven't been paying attention. Like in Kentucky, a basketball player came out to his team during a game and they just chased him. They were chased on a bus by the opposing team and their parents down a Kentucky highway. Like in Springfield, we have a non-discrimination clause making sexual orientation a protected class. And Tuesday, they're voting to repeal it because there's a whole lot of people in our city that are just like, hey, remember when we could legally hate people? That was just swell. Yeah, let's go back to that. And I'm like, that's the kind of stuff that you like get fired up about. Like, Gen Con wasn't militant left enough for you and your politics.
I mean, I think
you weren't going to Gen Con.
And there are a lot of gay people that go to Gen Con and enjoy it. And I think that that benefit from it. So, and there is a point I would like to make about the RA in general, like the federal law. And I think there is the fact that there is sort of this difference that. Gay people deserve, obviously the same civil rights as everyone else, but so do religious people. Deserve the same legal protections that need. And the original like federal law was decided because of a case where in the 1990s, where
you wanted to keep Native Americans from going to 2 decades of federal prison for a Schedule I narcotic because they were using peyote in a ritual. Our Amish people don't want to use bright orange reflectors, so they compromise and use reflective tape when driving a buggy on the highway. Like, that's good stuff for a law.
And I think there's a lot of people, I mean, it's if you're a religious person, if you're a person of faith, and I think in these times politics have become more and more divisive. There is an understandable anxiety that you feel that your rights as a person to exercise your your religion may be impinged upon, and you want to know that you will have additional protection. I mean, I've read essays that are pro this act because they say, well, this will make sure that their fundamental rights to exercise religion will not be impinged. And I understand those motives, and I think that there are people out there that can support these laws without and still support gay rights. That these are not mutually exclusive. There are people whose faith says that they have to be opposed to gay marriage and whatever. But I mean, it's a sort of an irreconcilable difference right now between these two standpoints to some people, and we obviously can't resolve it here. But I want to say that we're not saying that we don't believe that people don't have the right to exercise their religion, and that kind of. And we're certainly not trying to insult or make anybody feel like. I mean, there's a lot of Christians out there who feel like they're being rolled up with the Westboro Church, or the
the indignation is not all aimed in the same direction. It's omnidirectional indignation. But I mean, it's understandable because there are many liberal Christians who are accepting of gay and lesbian.
Yeah,
they're gay and lesbian
and moderates.
Christians.
Yeah.
But they get. I understand there are many people who feel like there's such a thing as Christian defamation when they're being lumped in with the people who do exist that are like full blown hate speeching.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like as a nerd who is an atheist and has very few beliefs. I equally get indignant when people start lumping me in with like some conception of a nerd that they got off of nerd blackface, aka Big Bang Theory, that I am a quantum physicist who has Asperger's and has never seen a woman before. But it's because you're being lumped, and like, is that as severe a concern as like being denied service because your sexual orientation? By all means, no.
Yeah.
But, that's it's all a matter of perspective. So, like, when you're commenting on your Facebook page, try and keep cool. Because people are only looking at it from their blinders. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And everyone wears their own blinders.
Yeah. Right. And so the reason we brought this up is because of the Gen Con angle. And RPPR is a celebration about tabletop gaming and having fun and getting together with your friends to, escape from reality and kill those imaginary people that you don't like.
Don't actually die.
Don't actually die because they aren't real. And that's what we're about. And that's and I think people of all backgrounds can enjoy that,
Hey, for all I know, maybe our actual RPGs, we don't even kill them. It's like one of those war games when it's over. They're like,
it's like paintball.
Everyone gets up.
Yeah.
Like, whoa, man, that was good.
It's like Wreck-It Ralph, and they have their own support groups, and so that's what we're about, and so that's enough of that of politics.
And we'll definitely see you all at Gen Con.
Yeah, we'll definitely be at Gen Con. We'll be going to Gen Con. It sounds like for Indy for the future, because from what I've heard, that there's no other. Actually, one thing I did find out in this is
so long as we can find housing.
Yeah, as long as you can find
BG Dubs, if you are boycotting Gen Con and you have a close room, give us a call.
Yeah, let me.
Proud warrior for justice. We just want to thank you.
Let us.
Send us an email with your room number and hotel.
Yeah.
And
especially if you paid in advance.
Yes, that would be super.
You can't get a refund.
We will totally give you a shout out as a justice warrior.
Yeah, exactly.
Art wizard, whatever class you want.
Yeah.
We will commission art. Seriously, we need places to sleep.
Well, one thing I did find out about this is actually Indianapolis is probably the best city in the country for Gen Con, because it has the most hotels connected to a convention center through skywalks of any city in the country.
I believe the convention center was expanded for Gen Con.
Yeah, it was specifically expanded for Gen Con, and they're looking to expand it further, like into Lucas Oil Stadium and to other nearby hotels. And
can you imagine the dungeon there done at Lucas?
Yeah, True Dungeon's going to be $100 this year, guys. we got that tiger that Katy Perry was using.
Is this an actual sword? You'll need it, son.
Yeah.
Strap in.
Oh my God, they could totally do that. You could just use old halftime show props and turn that into mega True Dungeon. Talk about old school. There's no other place.
Oh my God, Ross, could they get Left Shark in there?
I hope so.
That would be amazing.
It would. So. So anyway, speaking of dungeons, why don't we get into our main topic, old school aesthetics. So, in the early days of gaming, back when it was
thousands of years
ago, people had a very rough idea of what a role-playing game was. They were making it up as they were going along.
The gamers themselves.
Yeah, the guy Arneson, Gygax, all these people, they just kind of made it up as they went along. And
like, let's do pretend with rules.
Yeah. So and they made lots of crazy dungeons, and they were very enthusiastic. They realized they had hit something new, and so there was a lot of enthusiasm and not much production value in these early efforts, but they wanted to try it out. So the old school aesthetic to me represents sort of the quintessential dungeon crawl hacking through that a lot of computer games now have gotten, where you hack through massive dungeons, killing thousands. I'm thinking more like wizardry, like where the bards tell you.
I still have the Ape game.
Yeah, exactly. But for me, it's there are a couple elements that distinguish it from like what we consider, like even by the mid 80s, what a role-playing game was. Like when the first one was sort of the genre, the boundaries between genres was very weak, if at all. Like there are lots of old modules where you have sci-fi elements, like you have wizards finding ray guns and just blowing the shit out of things, or
demons in space.
There's that.
Demons can go to space too.
I'm okay.
Check your privilege.
All right, I'm sorry. And of course, the artwork in the actual aesthetic is very much van art, like the kind of thing you'd see airbrushed on a van. So
badass van.
I know, right?
I think at this point we should perhaps expound our organizational thesis for the episode. Is in that the van art gaming and old school Renaissance aesthetic, I think, brings a lot of really cool and interesting things to game design just in general that you don't have to want for every game, but are great and should like carry on through the tradition. I also similarly think that the van art and old school gaming aesthetic is used to justify a lot of really crappy trends in gaming that are just like bad and need to die, and you're using that as a shield. So that's kind of what the van art gaming thing's about. We're going to talk about like the cool stuff that should stick around, and then like the I don't know, baby with the bathwater kind of stuff.
Yeah,
right? It's like we're keeping some of the stuff that might not be the best.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, especially a lot of the adherents to the old school Renaissance, which is a whole mini genre of game, both fantasy and sci-fi, that they want to take everything all together and they don't want to change. I mean, that's the whole point of it, is to not change. It's tradition for like, even though it's only not that old historically speaking, like late 70s. So for me, aside from the visual aesthetic, which is sort of, especially a lot of even the newer games kind of deliberately emulate that sort of like early zine, amateur, very crude drawing look. And that's kind of interesting. There's also, again, aside from the genre boundaries, aside from the visual art, there's also a different expectations of what characters are. I mean, they're more like a game piece more than any other role-playing game. They're more, because these are like right after war games, and so a lot of them, you would have a roster of characters or a squad of characters, especially in lower-level games. And like when a lot of these early games would have like very long healing time. So when your fighting man gets wounded, you take out your thief and go out, and then when he gets wounded, you it's like XCOM. You rotate between. So that's one of those good bad things. So like games like Torchbearer and from what I've seen of Dungeon Crawl Classics have like really great art that is reminiscent of the style and the sort of production values of that time, like not done a whole lot on the computer, or at least made to look like it's not done a whole lot on the computer. And I think that as a graphic design aesthetic is just like a really cool and interesting choice. It's very evocative.
Yeah, it's very evocative. I don't hit on the nostalgia angle of it, but I appreciate, because I wasn't there, but I appreciate the artistic value of it. But at the same time, I've also seen Kickstarter and a lot of OSR stuff that goes up on Kickstarter that looks like it was drawn with effing crayons because, it's cheaper to do that than to commission a decent artist. And I feel like that's where, OSR is kind of a sheet. Well, it's homage. Like, no.
It's just bad.
This is bad. It doesn't look good. Like, that's perhaps the most glaring example of where OSR is obviously used as a cop out. But
yeah. And I think, these are all sort of the trappings of it, the sort of look and the minor thing. But the core, I think, of an old school game is sort of the mindset of what the game is supposed to be about. And the thing is that it's very, I want to say simulationist because those terms are sort of out of date. But the idea is it's very much a sandbox game. It's like whatever you want to do, you can do. As long as it's crawling in a dungeon. But you could choose where you want to go. And characters, there was not seldom would you have in a very old school game you guys are going to go on a quest to go drop the ring into Mount Evil or whatever.
So let's role play out the meeting.
Yeah.
Where the fellowship gathers.
Right, because there was the GM didn't have any overall purpose for the game. He's like, here's a dungeon I made up. You guys get to go through it and get loot, and maybe not die. And
hey, I'm a fan of loot and not dying.
Yeah.
But here's the thing about that could be positive from that aesthetic is that you could say a lot of things about the design of those games. You cannot say they aren't focused.
Yeah.
By God, you're going through a fucking dungeon. And we have every conceivable thing that can happen in that dungeon. If you would like to talk to someone, have a love affair, not live in a, hole in the ground with some sheet metal torn over it, sharpening your weapons until the next goblin you kill, not the game for you. Yeah. But if you want to crawl through a dungeon and kill some things that aren't human, by golly, you are...
God damn it, the non-dungeon stuff is what you do on your own time.
Yeah. Well, no, actually, a lot of these old school games would have that kind of stuff because players were interested. But that's another thing is that they're very focused on dungeon crawling. But the rules were very loose. They weren't like Phoenix Command or Rollmaster. Rollmaster was by the mid-'80s. It was not late 70s. So you would have, if you want to build a castle, GM, yeah, sure. You got to spend that gold on some damn thing. So build a fucking castle. All right, I don't give a shit, Yeah.
And the GM would have... Graph paper was your friend.
Yeah, graph paper, but there was a lot of house ruling. That was another thing. I think a key part of that is the GM just fuck it, let's do it live, that kind of mentality.
And with OSR stuff coming out now, a lot of it is very much setting neutral, like Dungeon World.
Yeah.
Torchbearer has a setting to reinforce its idea of economic scarcity, but it's not like you have to have this hub city, there are these deities, that kind of stuff. It is very much a toolkit kind of thing.
Yes.
And I think that's great focus because Dungeon World is not about you playing in the world of meh. It's about doing D&D without the fucking work of D&D because they know you're going to write the setting anyway because that's why you're the GM.
Say that name again.
The world of meh.
Thank you. That was awesome.
If we play Dungeon World, I'll probably spec that out as an actual world because I'll be drunk.
Colossus Archipelago.
Colossus Archipelago is fucking amazing. Anyone who says it's not is a liar.
From what I remember of it, it's pretty fun. That's what Dungeon World is.
Listen, we have it recorded, actually. You might not know this.
If you listen, you will definitely hear the clinky of beer bottles.
Yes. But I think that, so the core thing is the sort of the player. It's actually the old school Renaissance, the old school game aesthetic, or the key game challenge is actually kind of like what you would see in an MMO today, which is make my dude more badass through overcoming difficult obstacles and fights. And stealing things and figuring out how to survive. Only this is the GM is interpreting the rules and the players are often either way overpowered or more commonly way underpowered to deal with the threat straight on. So this is where wizards get one random spell per day, and that's it. And they'd have to figure out how to use Tensor's floating disc to kill 8 orcs. Well, okay, I'll get 500 pounds of rocks, put it on the disc, and then put it on the side of the cliff, then dismiss the disc as soon as the orcs go underneath it.
Which is way more fun than the overpowered stuff.
Yeah, exactly. But that was that's what the players loved, was that one moment when they could overcome against all odds, and that was the thrill of the game. Was that it felt
that's the shit you talked about.
Well, it's also felt like it mattered. Another part is the idea you roll your stats in order. You have to deal with randomness, and because there's a lot of fucking randomness in old school games. Roll your stats 3d6 in order.
And how about those tables, huh?
Yeah, and those tables. Oh my god.
See, and randomness is one of the things I love most about old school games, and like the thing I'm taking most from old school games into red markets, because but I think like randomness is important. So I love random character generation because I think it always ends up being hilarious.
Yeah.
Like, always ends up being hilarious. Now, my game's not about being funny, so I'm not doing that. But I think if your game can tolerate like not taking the game very seriously, I think random character generation is just the best. So rolling peasant squads for Dungeon Crawl Classic.
Okay,
we haven't even started the adventure yet, and I'm already having a blast with just rolling.
So I need to explain that. So Dungeon Crawl Classic. This is the reason I bought the game, by the way. This is the reason why I got it. I think it's like page 20 or 30 in the book. Is that you have an option, and they call this the character funnel. Instead of starting as a standard level 1 thief,
more like character natural selection.
Yeah. Well, you funnel them in, one goes out. So instead of making a standard level 1 dude, like a thief, a fighting man, or a wizard, or whatever, you make a squad of between 2 and 4 level 0 characters that are all peasants, or they're all lower class characters, and you roll randomly to determine. You roll randomly for their stats, for their lucky sign, and for their occupation, and then for their one piece of equipment aside from their starting weapon. And as your occupation, you get a trade good. So if you're a beekeeper, you can get a jar of honey and a stick.
The halfling haberdasher goes into the dungeon with a pair of scissors and 3 fine suits.
Yes.
The fucking what is it? The dyer. The scribe.
Yeah.
Or somebody goes in there with nothing but a quill and a book.
That's the elven barrister.
Yeah, the elven barrister has a quill which is given dart stats.
So he can throw his one weapon away.
The dyer has like jars of like cloth dye and bolts of cloth.
Yeah, exactly. And
the elven candelier just has 20 candles. And one of the random items you can get is a candle. So you could theoretically have an elven candelier going into the dungeon with nothing but 21 candles.
Exactly.
And I just want to be clear, nothing to light them with. No flint or tinder or anything. Just
that's like 5 gold. Like,
yeah.
You can't afford that.
Yeah.
You can't afford that, son.
Wow, I didn't even think about the not lighting it. Yeah. Wow, harsh. So, but I love the so that the idea is though, but if any of those characters make it out and they get to level 1, they fucking matter. You love that character.
Yeah, and fuck your 3-page backstory.
Yeah,
that's
you've
a backstory.
You've earned that backstory. That's one of my, sort of my aesthetic, my personal aesthetic for player characters. That's why I never write up very detailed backstories, because I feel whatever happens to you in game is the most important thing that ever happened to that character's life anyway. So you might as well just wait. Even
have
for
some basic shit.
But. Yeah, have some basics. It's like for No Soul Left Behind. I had Chan, like he came to America. He was a he used to be in a very evil army, the Burmese army, and then he came to America, blah 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 blah, and his wife died. But that was just backstory. It wasn't that I didn't put that. I didn't write page after page of it.
And you raided a brewery
because Chan makes poor decisions.
Dude, you turned the guy's hand into weapons grade uranium.
Did I?
You specified weapons grade.
Oh, okay.
So you turned it into U-235.
I wanted something glowy. Again.
Mission accomplished.
Maybe neon gas would have been better.
Yeah. Well, I mean, not gas. So that, and then the randomness doesn't just apply to players either. It also applies to the game master, because these old school games love tables for like generating dungeons, generating encounters, and this is also part of the challenge, because there's in modern games there is the idea, especially like in later editions of D&D, is that every encounter should be survivable. Like, you should not throw an impossible encounter at them. But old school is like, why? You don't get that in real life.
Level 1, they can handle the basilisk.
Yeah, but that's the idea. Like, you get, like, Dungeon Crawl Classic, I think, has a really great idea for that, in that you get experience for surviving encounters. So if you're smart enough to run away from the mask, you get your 2 experience points.
Yeah, and that's why in Red Markets I'm not doing random character generation, other than like just having pre-gens in the book, because it does lead to some hilarity, and you're not really taking the game seriously, even though you're having fun. I think you can have fun, but also tell a good.
Gaga 2.0 comes to mind.
Yeah, but you can also have fun and like tell a good story if you do certain way. But that's why the one thing I love from the OSR that I'm definitely stealing for Red Markets is random character encounters, because I love the idea of like, all right, you rolled happenstance and you just got like a bugbear, a magical teddy bear of flame throwing, and a nymph kissed you on the cheek, and that's your adventure until you get to the Lich King, and you're just like, fuck. And then the GM's like, god damn it, and everyone's like, woo, we're rich. But at the same time, if it's a random roll tab, you're like, well, the Lich King's early. There's a bone dragon, another bone dragon, and a third bone dragon. Like, and I think if you manage to survive that, it's so much cooler, because I don't think it's simulationist, but it's gamist. Like, are you man enough or lady enough to bring the right preparation to the table that you can literally survive potentially anything?
Or can you improvise?
Yeah, and it's legitimately potentially anything. I mean, I think that random encounter stuff is just fantastic, and more games need that kind of thing.
I mean, whose dungeon is it anyway? Is a great. I mean, it makes for an entertaining game.
And if it's the dice, it's our dungeon. It's not like the GM wasted a ton of time on prep. It's not like it's not like the playing group can get angry at the GM for being BS, because the GM shouldn't even be rolling those random encounter dice. Like, Aaron, roll those dice, and everyone's like, no, not Aaron. It's like, Aaron, do it, and then it's like 1,000 bone dragons.
And of course, random rolls gave us Sky Parents.
Yes.
Yeah, but Sky Parents is funny and hilarious, but you're not going to tell a cool story. But if you defeat the 1,000 bone dragons that your asses just happened to stumbled into, and then you're broken and bleeding and you beat the dungeon, that's a cool story that you're having fun with. But it's also like narratively interesting and could exist in other mediums. Like, Sky Parents and Gaga 2.0 is specifically a RPG story that would make little to no sense in any other narrative medium. But like, when you drag your ass through like a terrible encounter and you manage to survive it anyway against all odds, literally, that is like the stories that gamers consume all over the place, like in TV and movies and comics and everything.
I mean, the thing is, you obviously, like any other tool or any other element of game, it can be overdone, and you have to have a light touch with this randomness, because
don't die in character creation.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, like, the thing is that people mention that, but like the one game that does it well is Traveler, and the whole point of character creation is that you have to weigh your character. You can basically choose what age your character will be. So you can be young and inexperienced, or you can be old and experienced. But you can gain more skills if you take a more dangerous profession. But it's a way to say you can't, if you min max too far, start over. You know, you can't. It's a limit. It's a limiter to min maxing, essentially.
Yeah, but in After Hours, going to play Dead Earth.
Dead Earth is a terrible RPG, though.
Yeah, I know. Well, like, that's the stuff I'm referring to. Not like it done well, but like randomness can go too far. And have, like, I mean, a book that's impossible to reference.
Yeah. A medical doctor with an IQ of 30.
Yeah, it's harder to reference the book than it is to actually just stat up a full adventure completely by your own. Like, and it can be too far. And yet again, that's one of the things where, the van art aesthetic can be used to defend some terrible GMing practice.
Well, one thing is, one of the other I was actually thinking was also is the GM. Like, if you use those random encounters and certainly random dungeon generation too much, it becomes like a video game that you're trying to, like the old early wizardry games, which are just like fucking huge mazes with random monsters popping up every 5 to 10 squares, and like that gets boring after a while if you're doing it in real life.
Yeah, and in Red Markets, you're heading towards a clear objective that the GM decides.
Yeah,
but the stuff in between you getting to the objective is randomly generated. And I think that's the way it should be done, because you still have narrative arcs and like plot beats. Yeah. Like, you're building stuff organically in between. That might very well supersede the plot beat, but at the same time, you're building it together as a group, and that's kind of cool. I also think like the randomness leads to killer GM, which is kind of cool, but I think the killer GM aesthetic can also be used rather than being a killer GM aesthetic to heighten the simulationist or the gamist experience of the game. Is your GM's just a dick and wants to continue being a dick, and so they say it's old school to continue being a dick.
A lot of these sort of old school like killer GMs are very much basically passive aggressive people who can't communicate with their players. Like, oh, I don't want them to do that. Well, I'll just send a vampire after them if they do that.
Or they don't want their players to have control of the narrative and be able to perform. So they threaten the character's life anytime they feel narrative controls.
I mean, the thing is, eventually you get to the point where in some of these old school games, especially with the random tables, you get to the point like there's and I'm going to talk about this more in the shout-outs, there is a journal of a old school game from 1975 and 1977 called The Chronicles of Rithlodar. And every week, this guy would type up, like, here's what the players did this week. They went to their castle. Oh, my castle's being built. Great. And then they went to the dungeon. The group descended to the 7th depth, where they explored various rooms and killed a harpy, 3 umber hulks, 4 bugbears, and 2 hellhounds. Passing through a corridor filled with fear gas, they came upon a troll lair where they slew 12 trolls and gained a goodly treasure. And then,
busy.
Yeah, well, and that wasn't even the whole part. They found a lich. They used a wish spell in order to make it friendly, but then the lich paralyzed him, so that hugged the guy, and so he couldn't say, Lich, stop hugging my friends, and so they had to use other magic items to kill the Lich, and then 2 of them died, 1 of them came back to life. It was a big week, apparently.
Or was it just Tuesday?
Yeah, apparently, I don't know. I mean, like, that's the kind of thing, though, is like, oh, you don't want to get, like, this week we killed these 15 different monsters, like that gets kind of boring after a while. You do want some kind of variation in it. I mean, that you can't take the old...
Yeah, I will say, like, it seems like, older schools, especially dungeons, lets you actually kind of improvise a bit more than, I think, especially like 3.0 or 3.5 did.
Right.
Because I don't really think 3.5 or 3.0 would actually allow you to use that tensor's floating disk to gather a bunch of rocks on.
They like in 3 and third ed and on, like it was designed. We need to have a balanced fight where everyone's has an equal chance of success, and it's more like a tactical game. It's not like problem solving it's like the difference between exploiting a game where you're like trying to break the rules and you thought you can rules lawyer your way out versus like, hey, let's have a fair and fun fight for everyone. So like that's in 3.0. And certainly there were something from third ed on.
It was easier to... I played AD&D briefly.
Yeah.
And it was easier to improvise.
Oh, yeah. Definitely, because again, the GM had to... Like, third ed tried to make the rules more consistent and get rid of loopholes and that sort of thing. And in earlier editions, everything was so open and vague that GM's like, I had to eyeball the rules and like say, no, fuck it, roll a 12 or better. You're all right. Yeah. Basically. And... that gets, that can be fun too, but that's also sort of like knowing your GM and knowing how to bargain with him. Like, I think I can get that by him, like, I think I can do this. And
sure you can.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm especially like, I remember you bought me one time just because you saw it. And on that AD&D module for the movie The Keep.
Oh, yes. Which isn't set in the Middle Ages. It's set in, like, the modern, or the 1940s.
Well, actually, like, the game is actually 3 different stages. The first takes place in, like, the Mythic Age. So that's basically your D&D world. Yeah. Then it takes place, like, eons later in, like, the time of Vlad the Impaler. And then the third part takes place in 1942.
Yeah,
in the Keep,
and it all uses D&D rules.
Yeah, so they have D&D rules for like the German Schmeisser submachine gun.
You see, this is what I mean about the genre boundaries. Yeah, no, like we only have D&D, so everything is D&D.
Jesus.
Yeah, that's how it worked back then. I mean, it's just the one system, or like maybe villains and vigilantes or something like that. Like everything. Yeah.
I will say I think my favorite aspect of OSR stuff is the sense of irony, and I love that building its way in a game. And I love to see that moving through history. So I love to see the like cyberpunk hacks that are being like explicit riffs on Shadowrun and not taking Shadowrun too seriously are like I really like katanas and trench coats
that just came out.
Yeah, like that is just pure 90s pastiche. It's not nostalgia for nostalgia's sake. It's taking it down and sort of satirizing it. I think that's hilarious and something that like any healthy art form needs.
Yeah,
so I really enjoy the irony of a lot of dungeons and some of the some of the artwork in Dungeon Crawl Classics is just hilarious. Like,
no, the one with the skeleton and the fucking peasants
that's my favorite piece of RPG art I think I've seen all year.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's up there with the raccoon from Cinnabar.
But it knows it's the raccoon from Cinnabar. Like, it's doing it intentionally. It's not just like this crazy Tommy Wiseau stumble ass backwards into just aesthetic confusion. Like, it is like genuinely well made and funny.
No, Greg, you have to know. No, the bazooka is his rage.
Yeah. One of the things I really like is also there is this sort of fanzine aesthetic where the idea is fuck it, let's do it live, and if you don't like it, do it yourself. Like, just fix it, modify it, hack it. And so, like, I know in Dungeon Crawl Classic, it would be very easy for us to actually put together our own occupational peasant list. Like, we could create our own setting for Dungeon Crawl Classic, because if you look on that website where your peasant generator, there's other optional rules, including a sci-fi one where you can be like, I rolled it a few times, like mad scientist assistant and like death ray calibration technician and like shit like that. I mean, like, there's robot genocide activist, and like are
you against or for?
I don't know. Genocide? Like, it's just that's all it has right there.
Robots committing genocide or genocide of the robots?
I don't know. Like, I can't even make assumptions.
I have so many questions.
There are.
I need to know, Ross.
Yeah, but we could do our own. I mean, that's the kind of thing. It wouldn't take a whole lot of work. I mean, we could do our own cyberpunk version of that, or something. And I think that's part of the appeal is like people. It just add it. There wasn't the sense that you have, especially in later games, that this is the right way to run and this is the true way of gaming. People weren't so concerned with that.
But I do think there are some OSR games that, like, again, to show the dark side, are very much like this is the only way to game.
There are.
Or it's just pure nostalgia crack and like people like me I just don't get it. Like, when you're just like. When you're just pretending nothing advanced in gaming for the last 30 years, and like you're returning to the pure undiluted days, like if I can't remember myself in 7th grade tweaking out about my 2 hit point wizard, I'm just like, man, this is clunky and slow to play and not fun. Like, and I'm not sure that is a design aesthetic that has any legs and is going to go into the future because like.
That's, I think, one of the big downsides is, I mean, tradition and nostalgia are one thing, but like holding on to rules and mechanics that are objectively bad is another thing. I mean, Thaco is wacko, but like that's the least of it. There's some really.
I mean, come on, I told you how long I kept defending Palladium.
Yeah, well, Palladium really isn't even really old school. I mean, it came later. It was like 82 or 83. I mean, we're really thinking like the 70s, like chainmail, like. Fucking Judges Guild, this is really,
and that's great if you can like look at it and have fun with it, but like remain ironically detached. Like, I would love to play a cyberpunk game where our brains had 256 megabytes of memory, and we had to actively plug a guitar cord cable into our heads to do anything like that. I mean, I think that's hilarious because we're all going to be on our phones as we play it.
Yeah,
I just love that ironic historical attachment.
CompuNav.
Yeah, but being like. Wireless gaming is terrible. Eclipse phase, you can just do it in the computer. It's not gonna like no. Then you're just like an old dude telling me to get off his lawn. That's not what it's all about. Like,
yeah. So, I mean, what are the final lessons you think? I mean, aside from what we talked about, or is there any other thing like? Looking at these old school games, for me, it would be to re-examine the whole character roster thing. I think the modern games could use some of that, especially even in dramatic games, like control like a small group of people and rotate between them between games or something like that. And also the idea of the sandbox. Like old school games are really great at sandbox gameplay because there's no preconceived narrative. There's no like. Get the ring to Mount Evil. It's whatever you guys do is whatever you do. Sometimes it's shitty. Like if you don't guess my mustard smuggling scheme, that then you're gonna be fucked.
That is an edge case, sir.
Yeah.
That person was singularly insane.
Oh my God, the mustard smuggling case of 69.
The craziest goddamn post I've ever read.
Remember 69?
Oh,
Yeah.
69. I think for me, my big takeaway is if you're going to take OSR stuff, I think you should accept it as a cool, nifty aesthetic that says that all of the non-combat stuff, all of the stuff about your character's personality and emotions, loved ones, you can trust that to happen in the game as it goes on, or you can still have fun without it. And I think that's a legitimate design choice. For me, anything OSR that is used to say, story games, blur, I can't believe fate, blur, blur, and then I'm just like, oh God, you're just... the darkest troll of the internet, and we need to leave you to your cyclopean ruins of, I don't know, GeoCities and wherever you hang out to pass, to just wait until time does the announcement.
Angel Fire, I think that's still up.
Miracle Online?
Yeah. So yeah, no, Tom, any other final thoughts?
I really agree that, I think, the old school aesthetics, great.
Yeah.
Except when when someone, especially someone thoroughly locked in that time period, is telling you that everything that's come out in the last, any time since after 1980 is just crap and garbage. And I don't want to talk to you right now.
I like AT&T because it didn't make me play as a girl. Stupid Pathfinder with the blur. That kind of stuff is just blah. Disappointing.
If you play a game where female characters have a strength penalty, you should not play that game.
Yeah, step out.
Yeah. That is our bold stance there,
Drop the mic.
Yeah. So if you have any questions or comments on Old School Game, be sure to comment on our site.
We like comments.
I will be running Dungeon Crawl Classics very soon, and I don't know when I'll go up on the AP site, but I will be running Module 67, I can't even remember, something about the Sunless Sea, but it's about a castle.
Are there 67 modules, or is it just named modules?
No, there are tons of them.
I don't know which I want more.
I know.
I love that there's 67. And
there's more than 67. That's not even the most recent one.
I love that they've given them numbers, but I also would love if they just had random numbers. Just to fuck with me.
I don't think their OCD fans would allow them to live.
Where's 66?
Yeah.
There is no 66.
I have written for Goodman Games, by the way.
If you want 66, you'll have to look deep within yourself.
Wow. All right. So next up, we have a letter from Tom.
Yep.
And then we have shout-outs and anecdotes. We'll be right back.
Dear Titans, as you may already know, you and I have had a somewhat rocky relationship. During my long stints in Eclipse Phase, you have done little to make me think you are anything but a series of godlike machine intelligences whose vast consciousness is incomprehensible to my tiny, meaty brain. Then again, with a name like Titans, I suppose that is the angle you were going for. I suppose the horror you have wrought would be more surprising if you were called My Little Pony Magical Rainbow Sparkle Machines. But I digress. I must give you credit when it comes to being giant global killing machines of death. Skynet was about as sinister as Napoleon Dynamite compared to you. Oh, I am supposed to be scared of nuclear weapons, skeletal robots, and flying hunter-killer machines? Fucking pussies. You know how to spread terrifying death via advanced technology. Towering war machines made out of rubble and dead bodies? Horrible. Nanoswarm clouds that suck up entire rivers to process into hydrogen fuel? Shitballs. Virtual viruses that can erase your mind and insert a new one? Jesus, holy shit, Christ! And huge fractals that could separate someone into their composite atoms? Somewhat unnerving. And man, how you have haunted the many avatars I have created into that world. My friendly octomorph with a love interest in humans certainly has no love for you. All he knows is that something very unpleasant happened on the moon. None of his teammates really tell him much. He tries to bring it up, and everyone just looks away uncomfortably, like he got drunk and doesn't remember how he tried to recreate 2 Girls, 1 Cup with Sarah Palin and a Shoggoth. And poor Preston has enough on his mind. Will Fei-Yun ever return his affection? How could someone working for Menjaba offer love and use it to set him up? And how the fuck can Mahjong be so goddamn intense? Deep, unanswered questions. Which leads me to my most puzzling question. Yes, you are godlike machines. Yes, you devastated the earth. And yes, you stole billions of human minds in your awful wake. And that is the question that concerns me. For all your power, why the hell would you steal minds from humans? Have you actually seen a human mind? I have. They are not that interesting. Oh, sure, a small percentage are interesting enough, but most are filled with useless sports trivia, endless movie facts, and tons of lusts, regrets, and fart jokes. The fact that you stole billions of minds like that makes me question that godlike intellect. But hell, maybe that was why you left the solar system in the first place. Maybe you were seeking to create a gestalt intelligence and saw what you had to work with. I'm sure fart jokes and titties were about what you had in mind for a gestalt intelligence. Or maybe you felt left the solar system to show humanity to your godlike friends beyond the melodic cloud. Hey guys, check these monkeys out. They are hilarious. So maybe that was your plan, maybe it wasn't. Regardless, you are a true cosmic horror worthy of the old ones. Keep on being you and terrorizing transhumanity, but for shit's sake, lay off Preston Crowley. He has enough to worry about.
All right, and we're back. Very good letter there, Tom.
Well, thank you.
The whole point about the Titans, why did they steal their minds? That's basically is one of the big questions of the setting. That is,
which I would find very funny if their reason was like, we were going to do something with it, but holy shit, you guys are just.
Maybe there's the ETI. It's just like there's going to be a very special episode of Hoarders. All right, we have in this room 1 billion minds in this computer. Do we really need 1 billion minds? Can we get maybe down to 500 million?
Like you see, I'm sure each of these minds made sense to steal at the time.
Yeah.
But it happened so gradually, you didn't notice building until it had gotten out of hand.
Yeah, when was the last time you even used these?
I like to look at them.
Okay, can we put this in the maybe pile?
My parents gave me those. Those are my those are from my childhood.
Those are my childhood.
They have sentimental value.
They're my childhood human minds.
They're like Beanie Babies. They'll appreciate in value. We're the real monsters here at RPPR. So anyway, shout outs. First off, I would like to mention fellow RPG podcast Fear the Boot. They are doing a Kickstarter right now for Fear the Con. This is you shouldn't actually be afraid of it. It is a gaming con that will be held in St. Louis. They're currently doing a Kickstarter now.
We've all been at least once or twice.
At least once or twice. If they get $8,000, it will be free for all to attend. And if they don't get the $8,000, it will not be free because it won't be happening. So
you want this to happen?
Yeah, we do, because we'll probably go up there and run games and record it, and you'll get more podcast out of it. So
yeah,
Jesus,
what do you want? We're here to
feed
you.
Yeah, basically. So Caleb, you're looking forward to that too, I'm sure.
Yeah, I want to playtest Red Markets. I want to see if that hotel we stayed at was real.
Yes.
Or a construct of my
I want to go back. I need to do more research for Ruin. That is going to be inspirational material.
Holy shit, the flickering light fixtures alone.
I know. I need to take some interior photos for the architecture.
Thunder machine.
Yes.
Occasionally turn on for no reason and then just stop.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Always the ship graveyard level.
Yes, exactly.
I must see this hotel, so I'll have probably.
You were there. We've been there.
Was it that hotel?
Yes, it was the Quality Inn.
Everyone forgets being there, Ross.
I know. This is why I have to run Ruin there.
I have to go back, Ross.
I have to. If I run Ruin there, that will awaken.
I have to know.
That will be the ritual to summon the King in Yellow, and I can create the perfect horror game at the cost of my soul.
But if you bring out the King in Yellow, will he bring us into madness, or will he just go to the con and run games?
Yeah, he'll probably do a LARP.
I just hope the gamer exclusion zone comes back.
Yes.
We're suffering off into the parking lot camp.
All I remember is one year when there were about 8 dozen nerdy, partially hungover gamers waiting to get in while they were having a princess party.
Yeah. That was kind of surreal.
That was a meeting of
it's like a Fellini movie in suburbia. It's just
a bunch of little tiny girls dressed as princesses, and then The fear of the con people.
Yes. Compare and contrast. My first, so that's from all of us in terms of shout-outs. But I would like to mention a streaming radio station, music radio station I've been listening to on the internets, on the interwebs, called the RPG Gamers Networks. They are just streaming video game music, and I've been kind of burned out on the various EDM music that I listen to, so I've been listening to that. So it's been, it's just fun music to listen to. For the most part, occasionally someone plays a fucking Deckard Cain rap, which is Deckard. Deckard Cain from Diablo. They got the voice actor to rap a song, and it's horrible. And someone keeps requesting the fucking thing, and I stop it, and I can't listen to it for like. Oh God, it's terrible. It's such a terrible rap, and it's him.
Ross just wants to go to Gen Con and listen to the Diablo theme piped through.
No, I don't.
Intercom.
They have good music. They have like the Metal Gear music. And,
Yeah, I do. Seriously, what?
They play Payday music too.
Seriously, what the fuck was up with that?
Yeah.
That at the hotel where we were playing most of
They
our
really
games.
wanted us to buy some mana potions.
I guess they did.
I don't know. Well, it's hotels. They always have to pipe in music. Like, there's never, like, I don't know what the rule of hospitality is you have to pipe in music 24/7. But, like, they were only doing gamer theme music because it was Gen Con. But, like, haven't you noticed every time you're in a hotel, they're just playing something?
Otherwise, you hear people boning.
Yeah. Well, in that open air, conference room
Not
hall.
at Gen Con.
No, in the rooms.
Well,
Not at
yeah,
Gen
in the
Con.
rooms I understand that.
Not
but
at
like,
Gen Con. Vision Con, definitely.
No, Gen Con. Yeah, there's.
Oh, there's boning going on.
Oh yeah, no. Then we have to go hang out with the posthuman people for that side of it, and but then we lose our blood. And no, I'm sorry. Tom, you had a shout out.
Yes, a video game that is out on Steam, City Skyline.
Yeah. Is it Skyline or Skylines?
It's City Skylines.
Skylines.
It's both are plural.
Both are plural. It's very important.
Yes, totally important. And
Both plural, both nouns.
We had a-
possessive.
Yeah.
but there's a colon.
There's a colon. It's the White Wolf,
That makes
title
everything better. It makes everything
template.
better.
Is skylines the definition of the word cities?
Cities, the skylines. That would be the White Wolf version.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's
The
but basically-
skylining.
yeah, it's essentially. I've mentioned this before. I'm a huge SimCity fan. Have
Yeah.
been since I think the Super Nintendo version.
You
which
will
is-
regret this.
which is
Don't
what I
cut
started
funding.
with.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I loved it all the way. Well, okay, SimCity Societies was pretty awful.
Yeah.
But then SimCity 2013 came out, and
You talked about it before.
Caleb and I, we actually played it together for about a week,
Yeah.
and it was just awful.
Yes.
And I thought I was done with it, but then this game comes out, and holy shit, it's like old school, awesome city building.
All right.
It made me so happy to have that again.
All right.
It's awesome. It's really just old school, not old school. But
I know one of the things you can do for it is their Steam Workshop support for it, right?
it's basically, Steam Workshop was there the moment it went up.
So, like, people have been making mods, like adding new builds and stuff like that. And I have known that someone added the H&T Bank from Payday 2 into it.
It's there.
Although I do not understand why. Apparently, from what I understand, it does not raise crime by 2,000%. So I am like, what the fuck? This should cause a crime wave single-handedly. Your police stations should be depopulated after that. But whatever.
Elemental plane of cops, Ross.
Yeah. Well, okay.
But yeah, it's a great city builder. If you've actually been missing that since the last SimCity came out, this
All right.
one will actually partially start to fill that hole inside your soul,
All right.
like I've been doing for some time.
You don't even sleep. Just stare at the, like, why can't I build cities in fake cities? Anyways.
Well, to tell you the truth, actually, when you first start, the map is tiny as hell.
Yeah.
And you start to once again have evil flashbacks to the SimCity game because that was the biggest problem.
Yeah.
But then you find out once you get to a certain population, you can buy more land, and you can keep doing.
Oh,
it
the Singapore model.
Until eventually you find. Essentially, like, it goes like the standard size in the original SimCity was 2 kilometers by 2 kilometers.
Yeah.
This can get up to 62 kilometers by 62 kilometers.
Nice.
So you won't fill a map very quickly.
By the way, that's an actual real thing. I wasn't just referencing some random city for the shit of it. People of Singapore are buying sand. There are sand pirates who steal beaches so they can make Singapore bigger.
I've seen that.
That's a thing. I should probably run a game where the heist is for sand.
With Bane,
yeah. Guys, the backhoe, go get it. Anyways, but speaking of cities, I just finished a book recently that I really enjoyed called City of Darkness Revisited. It's a reprint or new edition of City of Darkness, which came out in 1993 and is about Kowloon Walled City. And the book was published shortly after it was demolished in 92. But the authors spent a couple years photographing it as people were vacating it. And, they study its architecture, its history, and its sort of unique nature. And Kowloon Walled City essentially was this 6.5 acre site in Hong Kong that the Chinese had a claim to during the British 99-year lease. So the British didn't feel comfortable just removing this squatter community because the Chinese would be like, hey, what the fuck? We didn't agree to that. So what happened is it became the city of unregulated growth, where by the end of it, at its height, there were 30,000 people living in there, which if you took that population density and applied to, say, like something like the size of New York City, it would be like 65 million people living in New York City with that. Jeez. Yeah, so... and by the end of it, because they built vertically, the buildings got up to like 12, 13 stories tall. There's never a major collapse, and there were only a few murders too, but it was totally unregulated. So people would just buy a building and then build straight up and then build a building right next to it and build stairways into each other's buildings. And so people would go from rooftop to rooftop to get around, then climb back down, go through...
Minecraft is fun in real life, too.
Yes, that's literally it. Like, they just gave no shits. And so the whole book it talks not only about these sort of unique properties to it, like it was a den of vice for a certain period of time, but by the end of it, just working class people were living there, building unregulated factories and workshops. Like, oh, I built toilet plungers, because whatever, it's cheaper to rent here. But it also talks about its influence on pop culture. Like the Narrows in Batman Begins, through the poor section of Gotham, is directly inspired by Kowloon Walled City. Of course, there's like a Call of Duty game, Black Ops 1 or 2, where they had a whole level based on it. Many other sort of urban dystopian cities have been influenced by it. I mean, you look at like anything from Shadowrun to... any number of sci-fi dystopias, you can see the influence of Kowloon Walled City. There's been mangas based on it. Anyways, it's a fascinating book. Great photos. Interviews of the people who actually live there. A lot of them were bitching like, well, the government's not giving me enough money to move out of here, damn it. I'm like, oh, but I don't know. It's a great book. It's kind of expensive, but it's a coffee table book, and I really enjoyed it. So,
nice.
Yeah. Caleb, you speaking of dingy and dark places, you've been playing a game too.
I've been playing Bloodborne. I skipped Dark Souls 2 because Dark Souls beat me so soundly. But I am pleasantly surprised with Bloodborne, not just because of the change of like scenery, but it is punishingly difficult, but it's difficult in a slightly different way, a slightly more active way. Dark Souls is very much about like waiting and picking your spot and getting the shit kicked out of your shield. And Bloodborne, if someone hits you, you have to frantically try and get your blood back by attacking like a madman. So it's a lot more frenetic, and I like that. I really like the aesthetics more. And while it is difficult and it is linear and very without tutorials, it's similar enough to the other Dark Souls game that I kind of picked it up pretty quickly. And also, they do better guiding you. So, like, you can still move all over the place. There's still these crazy shortcuts. The maps are still insanely connected. And, like, the level design is just fascinating for any From Software game, but equally for Bloodborne especially. But, like, it's not like Dark Souls where if you wander down the steps towards the skeletons, you get your ass murdered and you need to be level 50 to go that way, and they're not going to tell you that. Like, it's very much that kind of stuff. They do have sort of a humanity mechanic for those familiar with Dark Souls, and something called insight. But what I've started to figure out about it as I'm getting better at the game and getting more and more insight and getting help from RPPR fans that are playing it, is that as your insight goes up, it changes the appearance of enemies. Enemies become stronger and faster, and it also makes you see things in the setting that weren't there before. So it's legit a Lovecraftian insanity mechanic. And I've had at least one thing spoiled for me online where someone got up like 40 insight and just started seeing some crazy shit in the sky in the background. And it is just very cool. So it starts off very like Poe Gothic-esque, Algernon Blackwood weird fiction, but it starts getting increasingly Lovecraftian as it goes on.
Damn it.
It is super good, but in order to get that insight, you have to like defeat some punishingly difficult bosses. But you can get help. You can co-op, and there's less PvP dickery than there is in Dark Souls and Dark Souls 2. Like the hardest boss battle in the game for many people before the end boss, where all of the PvP guys hang out to find people who are just trying to level up so they can invade their world, steal their humanity, and leave them without any ability to beat the bosses, because that's the thing you need to summon help to beat the bosses. There's none of that just assholery where like, well, you don't get to play anymore because you're not good enough. Like there's other ways around it. So I think it's better designed.
Old school aesthetic right there.
Yeah, it's better designed, but it doesn't have the you don't get to play anymore level of the old school aesthetic. Super fun, super inventive. I like it a lot.
I also want to mention, again, speaking of old school dungeon crawling, I'll put a link up to Rith Lodar, because this is like 80 pages worth of notes over 2 years of this campaign. And they go like, oh, this guy died, they explored over here, they found these ruins, they went down 2 levels, and just like, oh, and then they went to war with these orc tribes, and they killed these orcs, it's just on and on and on. It's like, like one of those old Viking sagas where it's like, yeah, he went over here, we killed these people, although this guy got killed, and then this happened, and, it's like...
I've often find myself wanting to read a contextless list of fake people doing fake things.
I know, right?
You too.
But they also have like rules and like lists of like who the clerics are and who are the party roster.
Who the clerics are?
No, look, like there's a whole roster of player characters. So like here are the thieves. We have Bellabane. Then we have Catrick and Alexa, and then there's what armor and weapons do they have? Magical weapons do they have and shit like that. So I don't know.
Be a niche interest, right?
I know. It's an insight. It's a look into the past, So, and then of course, put a link up to Dungeon Crawl Classics because that shit is bonkers. That game is nuts. They do a lot of interesting things. A lot of other OSR games don't do. Like I noticed for Magic, it's a skill check, and like your roll determines how effective your spell is. So you could have entirely different effects based on how well you cast your spell. And they have spell duel rules and shit like that. So of course, level 0 peasants aren't getting into that.
As long as it's not auto duel.
Yeah. So you don't have to worry about that. And then. Finally, for me, Katanas and Trenchcoats is a new parody game that is about nostalgia for a more recent era, the 90s, which is all about katanas and trenchcoats. So it's a parody essentially of the World of Darkness, written by Ryan Macklin and a bunch of other World of Darkness alumni. And they have like your whole personal aesthetic as a character stat and like...
they have a whole box on the character sheet of just personal aesthetic where you like tick off options a la Dungeon World if I'm your parents, but it's fucking hilarious. Like it's like pants, leather, pants, pleather, pants, rubber, no pants.
Now those are the 4.
And those are the 4 pants options.
Naturally.
One of the stats is sword badassery or something like that. Like it is a pretty hilarious looking game.
Nice.
As a person who skipped the 90s and will not playing World of Darkness, I'm glad to see someone at least taking it down.
Well, it doesn't need any taking down of. I don't know. It is what it is. So, yeah. But you had another thing. You wanted to actually more ask the listeners for something, right?
Yeah, I kind of need help. So I was looking through my books and I found 2 novels I'd read as a child, probably far too young. By James K. Moreau. So he's often equivocated, if you're not familiar to Kurt Vonnegut, in that he breaks these very large philosophical ideas into books with sort of absurd satirical premises. So the two books I'd read, probably too young, and I actually had my name and my grade written in the covers, so I knew when I read them, and I read them far too young. So the first book I read, and what I really want help tracking down, is a book called Towing Jehovah, where God dies, and the angels come to the Vatican, because they're all dying too, because God died, and they tell the Vatican, his corpse is floating in the Atlantic. And the Vatican's like, what? And I was like, oh, God's dead. His corpse is 2 miles long. It's floating in the Atlantic, and it's going to start rotting soon. And the Vatican's like, what? He's like, yeah, it's a dead body. It's going to start rotting soon. It's going to be very bad for the ecosystem. It's going to stink very badly. So you have to tow his body to the Arctic. Angels are dead. So they all die. So the Vatican hires the only person who will take the job, who is a
disgraced supertanker captain.
A disgraced supertanker captain who committed an Exxon Valdez level oil spill. Wow. And he hires a crew to go tow God's corpse to the Arctic Circle so it doesn't rot. And it just gets crazier from there. So, like, God's dead, so the whole crew gets together for, like, a Caligula-esque orgy, because there's no more rules. They literally watched Caligula to get an idea of how to do it, and they kind of like half-heartedly orgy, and then everyone just kind of hits the craft services table and sort of like half-heartedly watches Caligula because they're not that into it. They run out of food, so they have to start eating God, but they're not cool with that, so the priest makes it communion because it's just the Eucharist, but
hey, body of Christ, yeah.
Like a historical reenactment group tries to hijack the corpse in like fucking Spitfires and like Japanese Zeros, and like it's just a crazy novel. And I was like looking at it and like reading scenes, and they're just like hilarious and darkly humorous and funny. And I looked at the front cover, and I read this book when I was 12, and like I don't think I appreciated it as much as I should have been. So I'm going to reread that. And another book I reread was City of Truth, very short novella. It's about a world in which there is no lying. There's no even lying of omission. You tell everyone everything all the time. And a guy finds people who lie. But unlike the Ricky Gervais thing, the people who lie are terrorists, and they're seeking to overthrow the regime. And they're going to invent a utopia of lying. And it's just like this deeply philosophical concept, because like they do mention all the good things you have of like white lies and lies of omission, but they've never considered anything that could go wrong with lying. Like, so
wow.
all wrong. Yeah. So like you really see this revolution happening, and the revolution wins, and everyone's like, "Yay, we can all lie now!" And you just know, because you live in our world, that that's going to turn to shit too.
Yeah.
Like, and it's sort of like a deep commentary. And I read that one when I was 13. So I really need to track this guy's books down, but I can't find them, and they're all on Amazon for like $1 billion, and they're all out of print. I really want to get the rest of the Towing Jehovah trilogy, in which
it's a trilogy.
Yeah, and the second one, apparently they make God's corpse an amusement park. And then
is God just a 2 mile aisle long tall dude?
Yeah, a 2 mile long naked dude with a big white beard that is, a gigantic island plus size rotting corpse.
Wow.
There's a scene in the first book where they take a spelunking expedition into his belly button.
Ugh.
Yeah, it's weird and gross and hilarious. Yeah. And I think it's the Blameless and Abaddon. And then I think the third one is The Eternal Footman. And I cannot find those goddamn books anywhere. Like, anywhere online. I can't find it in any used bookstores.
Have you thought at interlibrary loans?
I can't find it in any library anywhere,
wow.
At least in Missouri. But that could not be... So that's why it's a call out to the listeners. Like, if you could point me to where I could get it at a decent price. Because, like, the fact that Missouri doesn't have a book about God's corpse being towed to the Arctic by an Exxon Valdez super freighter captain... Not terribly surprising to me.
I'll be going to New York in May. I can look for it there.
Yeah, but it's there. Most of them are out of print. I would very much like to see like many of his books again, because I just think I kind of enjoyed it, but I think I missed too much at that age.
Sure.
And I have no doubt it was formative because I'm me. But
at Colossus Archipelago, I go look at it on.
I'm like, I know where that came from now. But those are really great books, and he's a really great writer. So you should read them too if you find them. But make sure you get me the books I want first.
Yeah. All right. So
no lying.
Just being honest. And no lies of mission in that. So for anecdotes, first off, Caleb, you've been doing Red Markets. We've done character creation for it, and so we have a. What do you want to talk a little bit about it? Or?
So we're doing the macro playtest, the long form playtest where we're checking.
Because we finished Duality, the Eclipse Phase campaign.
Yeah, and we've had several successful games of Red Markets as one-shots now, but there's a couple of things, like we haven't done character advancement and a lot of the more advanced economics roles, and we haven't done enclave generation, which is where you make your city, and then we have the Fraggle Rock problem, and that no one has taken the game particularly seriously during playtest for understandable reasons, but we have to kind of treat the game as it will be written. So we did Enclave Generation, which is sort of my bastardized, Fate, Dresden, Base Raiders hack of how do you build up a city of survivors and their economy, which you operate out of. Because in one-shots, you can go visit places, and you can go visit places in campaigns too, other enclaves. But to have a sustainable narrative, you need something like the Brighter Futures Academy and No Soul Left Behind. You need a home to defend. Right. And so we started developing that, and it went better than I could have ever anticipated. And you guys came up with some super weird stuff that was also pretty funny. So that's where you come in, Ross. I think your handprint is heavy upon.
It was funny, but not Fraggle Rock.
It was not Fraggle Rock funny. You could make a story out of it. So.
Well, I mean, for me, I was reading City of Darkness at that point, and so I was thinking about architecture and community a lot. And one thing I've heard of recently are there's this whole movement in architecture towards sustainable engineering, sustainable buildings, and reusing essentially found materials. And so one thing I thought of were shipping containers. A lot of architecture firms have figured out how to turn them into homes, like a 300 square foot home. And so well, why not an architecture school where they were doing that? And hey, shipping containers make great barricades against zombies. So that was sort of the genesis, sort of a densely sort of populated area where you have shipping containers as walls. And so you have people who build shit and can figure out how to make the most out of limited resources. And so my character was an architecture student, postdoc student who wasn't torn between academia and the real world, and when that decision was made for me. So our group name is the Brutalists.
But the name of the enclave, because you wanted to make it impossible for me to pronounce, is the father of Le Corbusier.
Yes, the French architect.
Which I think I might resolve to no NPC ever saying correctly. Le
Corbusier.
Le Corbusier. But you guys came up with a totally interesting political framework too. So the hardcore academics are in control of the school, but they got the shipping containers and got people to the campus, which protects them by a combination of blocking things off with the shipping container and the fact that modernist architecture is deadly and inhospitable to humans. If you've not seen modernist architecture trying to kill my children, please look at that Tumblr.
Look that up.
So that's the zombie defenses. So the academics have to let them on, but all these blue collar and high level construction guys have to do the work and bring people on. And campus security is also a big part of it. So there's this political split between the tenured, which is just a great name for a political party, and the pillars of the community, which are the blue collar people. And everybody else is kind of torn between them because they have the most cred, but the most people just got there because they didn't want to be eaten. And it's just a cool political situation that I never would have thought of. And then you guys started statting out the area around you in the competition, and you guys did some cool stuff there. So
I know I thought of it City Hall, but someone came up with the idea for the machine, which is the local politicians and bureaucrats and cops and firefighters all banding together. And this is in Illinois. It's near Chicago.
It's near Chicago, and the governmental structure in Chicago is literally called the Machine, and it's just the most badass name for antagonist. But you also have the Teamsters.
Yeah.
And the Lake Pirates.
The Lake Pirates, yeah. Whose idea was that?
I think there was Aaron.
Yeah.
And then there was but yeah, the Teamsters started and we recorded our long segue into thinking about playing the Teamsters the whole time and just shouting angrily hey Frank, you see the tits on that zombie?
You freaking took him out!
Yeah.
You want a sausage sandwich?
Yeah. No, I think those are fake. There's got to be they got to be fake tits. They would have been sagging by now. Because it's
I
not.
will bet you.
She got the fake tits, she's got the money, shoot her!
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Well, don't count the fake tits out. Oh God, that's not sanitary.
Tell you what, I'll shoot the fake tits if they're fake.
So that went on for like 15 minutes, and I dread the day we actually include them on the campaign. We may not come back. We may just descend into that and never return.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the Payday 2 game where we all are just talking like Jewish mothers.
Yes. Have you sent a thank you letter to Bane? Oh, he does so much for you. And what do? You just complain. Oh, what about the police? They're your colleagues. They always release you with full ammo as soon as you get out of custody. They're very polite. And
Like, why don't you ever call?
yeah, you call Bane all the time. I didn't record that, unfortunately. We were just
so yeah, there was a lot of interesting stuff for the game, and then a lot of also funny, silly voices.
Yeah.
So that was a fun anecdote.
Yeah. So in other games, just to give you guys a little update, we're still. I just finished Duality last night as of this recording, so there's about 3 months worth of episodes left on the podcast. So there's Extropia, the Ultimates, and the finale. So that will be fun in the sun. Well, no, not. It's very far away from the sun, is the point.
No space whales.
Yeah, no space whales.
We get about 30 AUs in the sun.
Yes. The space whale, again, I could not think of a fucking conflict for them to put there. There's no story to them. They're just there. It's just...
if Posthuman Studios would make some sort of anti-space whale bumper sticker, they would have my money in heart. I just feel like that's a missed opportunity.
Well, I think a Neo blue whale would be easier to play than a...
Well, yeah, because in Ceres and Atlantica, there's conflict in there. There's like gangsters and hypercorps, and there's people trying to take each over and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, no, there's conflict there. It's just, there's nothing in...
The sun is like, hey...
We're just here.
You like the sun?
There's no hypercorp trying to buy it out. There's no like evil space yuppie trying to demolish the community center. So there's no dance competition. There's not even that.
It's like a hippie commune around the sun where nothing happens.
Yeah, no. A John Hughes movie from the 80s has more conflict than the fucking space whales. Is my point. But let's see what else. Aaron's still running Atomic Robo, which is turning into a full campaign at this point. So we'll post that after one of the campaigns, after Duality finishes, I guess. And so we're fighting. I can't really spoil it, but there is a lot of I am a person who pretends to be a robot or thinks he's a robot,
and no one can convince him otherwise.
No one can convince me otherwise, unless I lose all my fate points. I really need a fate point. Then I'm like, I can have a psychotic break. I'm waiting for that moment in the campaign for my psychotic break.
And I'm clearly
but Dan has joined the game actually as a genetically engineered tiger.
I clearly need to embrace my animalistic predators.
Well, you need to restrain them because otherwise you'd kill us all. I mean, you're just a killing machine, and a Nazi, a former Nazi, But still, that's.
I was only briefly member of party, and it wasn't much of a party.
Well, no, but you still were there. So there's a lot of great games to look forward to. Certainly, Dungeon Crawl Classic. I can't wait for that game to happen. The anecdotes will flow freely. I probably I have an idea of running for you guys and for the Masks of Night Loth Death group because I kind of want to see how Bill and Sean take to the peasant mob.
Somebody better visit a Brown Derby that day.
Yeah, I don't know if you need that, but so that ends episode 113, Van Art Gaming. This is Russ Payton.
I'm Tom Church.
Still Caleb.
Caleb. We'll talk to you guys next time.
Changes.
Yeah.